Hello, Narnach here. Welcome back to Path of Exile's Fall of Oriath beta. The new damage over time support gems are in the beta, and I've had an opportunity to play around with them for a little bit. Like for example this very lovely gem called Vile Toxins support. And I just want to give you my current thoughts of which of the gems are good or for a build that really specializes in dealing poison damage, what I currently think is the best setup, and just have a little bit of a look at the other ones. So for a refresher, I'm running a Viper Strike on this build. I'm using Multistrike, so I do a lot of attacks. They do less initial damage, but because I'm using more attacks, each attack is gonna apply a stack of poison, and my strategy is to just apply a lot of poison stacks. One of the nice properties of a Viper Strike is that your poison damage lasts for 8 seconds instead of the normal 2 seconds. So poison lasts a lot longer and is a really viable way to build a lot of stacks if you're using Viper Strike. From the skill tree, I also have the 50% increased duration, so it's actually 12 seconds per stack. And on top of that, I'm running Temporal Change, so it lasts even longer, though I'm not actually really focusing too much on Temporal Change in the calculations, because it just benefits poison even more. Prior to the new gems being added, I was running with Void Manipulation, which increases chaos damage and it reduces elemental damage. I don't deal any elemental damage on this build, it's just physical and chaos. So Void Manipulation is just free damage. The chaos damage boosts your initial hit, because a Viper Strike does convert 25% of your physical damage to chaos. So it applies 1/4 there, and for the rest it boosts your poison at 100% effectiveness, because it's both poison of both physical and chaos damage. Thing is, it's no longer the most effective way to scale your damage. We have better ways to scale it now. Multistrike is still really good, but what we now have is we have Brutality. Supporter skills deal 44% more physical damage, and the nice thing is this is just plain physical damage. This applies to the physical part of your base damage. It applies to the chaos damage or the poison damage that you apply as well, because it is both physical and chaos. And the nice thing is, because this is more physical damage, it applies to all of your physical damage before it gets converted to chaos. So it's a very potent. In addition to that, we have Vile Toxins, which I think currently is the best way to scale poison damage. Supporter skills deal at level 10 39% more damage with poison. Starts at 30, you get 1% per level. And supporter skills deal 5% more damage with hits for each poison on the enemy, up to 7. So if the enemy has 7 stacks of poison applied to them, then you're getting the full bonus, which will be 35% more damage with hits. So that's just the initial impact with Viper Strike, that's not the poison. At level 1, this only has 6 stacks, and then 5 times 6 is 30%, base is 30%, and at some point I got 7, and I'm assuming they keep track. So at level 11 the damage with poison is going to be 40%, and I assume that we're going to get a limit of 8 stacks. Vile Toxins is a really nice way to boost your hit damage based on the poison stacks that you have. So it really synergizes very well with a build that really focuses on poison, because it rewards you with more hit damage for the poison. So thematically very appropriate and very nice. And it also cuts into something that is pretty core to a poisoner build if you want to play one of those, and that is the trade-off between damage with hits and damage with poison, and how that relationship changes over time. Before the new support gems were added, the best thing you could do was have Multistrike, have faster attacks, and then have something like a Void Manipulation to just apply a lot of poison stacks that were relatively small, and with void manipulation you could scale them a little bit. The new support gems, they allow you to make trade-offs. The Fall Toxins, it's always on bonus to poison, and it allows you to catch up with your initial hits or with your physical hits to catch up to the poison. Brutality, it's just awesome because it boosts your physical damage. There's no downside if you're playing a poisoner, because you don't want to do elemental damage, because elemental damage doesn't poison, unless you're playing some kind of weird build that has fire conversion to poison or something like that. But oh, for the plain builds, Brutality is gonna be awesome. So let's have a look on weapon switch. I have been leveling a couple of other things. Deadly Ailments is also new, and it deals 30% less damage with hits. So your initial hits or the actual hits that you deal are going to be weaker, but it deals 74% more damage with ailments at level 13. It started at 50, and you get 2% more damage with ailments per level that you level it up. So eventually it's going to hit 88%, I think, something like that. It's going to be quite a boost, basically. And the price you pay is that your hits deal less damage. I tried it, but your hits will actually deal a lot less damage if you also combine this with Multistrike, because that also has a 30% less damage multiplier. And if you combine those effectively, they combine into a 50% total less damage multiplier. So your hits will do half damage, but your ailments are going to be scaled through the roof. But the thing is, if you look at most combat patterns, you're going to be hitting, you're going to be moving, and it's not like you're going to be hitting all the time. So you want to have some base damage to allow you to leech, to allow you to deal some damage. And then there's going to be some hit, some run, and some target switching and things like that. So Deadly Ailments, yeah, it can work, but it's not the greatest way to scale it. And Fall Toxins is better because there's no downside on the initial hits. So your total effective damage over time is going to be a little bit more effective. There's, let's see, old school Void Manipulation, still leveling that on switch. New Chance to Bleed. Attacks have a chance to cause bleeding, and they have a little bit of added physical damage. Initially just disregarded them, so I haven't actually been leveling them for a while. Just recently cleaned up some gems and decided to level them. They don't look that great. 6 to 9 added physical damage, but on the other hand, this is level 7, requires level 29. Over time, this might actually scale up to be pretty significant. It's just difficult to judge, and also to see how the scaling is going to go. Because adding physical damage, it will apply to both your hit damage as well as to the bleeding damage. And if you're also doing chaos damage, chaos will benefit from it as well. Over here we have Lesser Poison, which is basically the chaos poison version of Chance to Bleed. 25% chance to cause poison, and you do 6 to 9 added chaos, same level requirement, all that. You can add them together, then you have even more flat damage that you can add for your poisoning benefit. Interesting thing here of having flat damage added, the damage effectiveness scaling on the gem that you link it to is going to apply to how much damage gets added here. And if you look at something like a Molten Shell, 200% effectiveness of added damage. Golem, I think it also had a higher thing. No, it didn't. Was it the Totem? Where's my Totem? Warchief, 114% effectiveness of added damage. Leap Slam, 118%. They're weird numbers now, but that's probably mathematically correct. But that is one way to scale your things. Maim is interesting. Supporter skills deal 17% more physical damage. So there is a more damage multiplier here that just scales up over time. Supported attacks have a 30% chance to maim on hit. and maim is a 30% movement reduction. But the kicker here is that enemies maimed by the supported skills, they take 27% increased physical damage. So that's similar to how vulnerability works, and I believe it actually will stack additively with vulnerability. But if you don't use vulnerability, effectively you can read this as enemies that are maimed take 27% more physical damage that you apply to it. So the interesting thing, of course, is on switch. Viper Strike, 75% physical damage, so there it helps. And your bleed and your poison damage, they should benefit completely from this. So you deal 27% more bleed and poison damage. That is pretty nice, because it's a more multiplier. Thing is, it's conditional, so you do need to maim the target 30%. It's not guaranteed, but no, if you're attacking fast, it's pretty okay if you're going up against a single target. And it makes it more difficult to run away. Trade-off is that you don't benefit from the damage multiplier if the target is not maimed. And if you're doing a lot of hit and run, or if you've got a foe that is difficult to get to, like for example the factory boss with the vortices around, then you're just not going to benefit all that much from it. So this is very, very conditional. It allows you to spike, but if it doesn't work, then the base effect is a little meh, and then Brutality is much, much stronger. Lastly, Unbound Ailments. Supporter skills have increased duration and increased effect of ailments on the enemy. And the interesting thing here is that it is ailments, so it works on poison, it works on bleeding, but it also increases the effect of things like chill, freeze, shock, and ignite. Ignite, probably going to be more damage. Shock might slow them down a bit more, not quite sure. Freeze, I don't think the effect of freeze can be any more, because no, they don't move. The increased duration of ailments also effectively reduces the threshold that you need to cause a freeze or something, or a shock to happen. So for builds like that it's useful. And I wonder if the increased effectiveness of shock allows the shock, if you can apply it, to actually deal more increased damage. But that's difficult to measure, but it would be interesting to know. Okay. So one thing that is not an actual ailment per se, but it is interesting nonetheless, is Decay support. Supported skills inflict Decay, dealing 625 chaos damage per second for 10 seconds. So it's going to deal 6,250 chaos damage if you hit a target once. It's not a stacking thing, so just hit them once and they will just decay quite a bit. I had it on weapon switch for a while, since I didn't really figure out a nice way to put it in my setup. And then I realized I can just put it on my golem. Got a stone golem, it does smashes, it rolls through entire packs of mobs, and it actually just paints them all green. It's pretty darn effective. In this case, it's an effect that gets applied, so I don't think if the golem has any bonuses or penalties to damage that it's going to apply to the decay. But the thing is, there's no tooltip of decay, so it's really difficult to know what does and doesn't affect it, because, well, on the character screen there is nothing for decay that is listed here. So that would be interesting to actually get a tooltip for the decay effect. Now, similar to how for the attacks we're now seeing the bleeding and the poison damage, it would be nice if for things like a decay we could actually see the damage that gets applied by it. But no, in the end I settled on Viper Strike, Multistrike, Brutality and Vile Toxins. It's not the highest poison damage setup, but if you manage to stack all of your poison on the target, you will have the highest per hit damage, and you will have pretty good poison damage, and the net result is that it is the most effective damage dealing combination. And just glancing over at my spreadsheet to the right, because of course I have a spreadsheet for this particular setup with Vile Toxins, Multistrike, Brutality, etc. At my current levels and current damage. My per hit damage, the initial hits are going to be 5,500, and if I'm fully toxined up, it's going to be 7,500. And the poison, if we keep attacking the same target for 12 seconds straight, then we will be dealing 13,000 poison damage. So about 2/3 of our total damage output is going to be based on poison, and the remainder 1/3 is going to be the actual hit damage. So for a poisoner build, shifting that much of your damage towards poison, I think it works pretty well, and it's very much in theme. So with that said, let's stop talking and let's start demonstrating. We're going to run a beach map today with physical reflect and reduced life recovery, just because we should be able to do it. We don't do a lot of damage. Some of our damage gets converted to chaos, and we have an insane amount of leech, and we have an insane amount of armor compared to the damage that we will be taking. Our average hits will be about maybe 1,000 points of physical damage. So basically we are immune to reflect, at least at this point, and I think even in more severe conditions we should remain relatively unaffected by reflect. Also, let's pick up a split arrow here. Okay, that one is now pretty much dead. One of the nice things, of course, is bosses, once they are poisoned enough, they will just die. Oh, another interesting thing. I actually got lucky with a duel, and I found the threshold duel for a Viper Strike. So we have 9% increased damage over time, which affects our poison and our bleeding. Also 2% increased damage with hits and poison for each poison on the enemy. I think I need a little bit of attention here. So as you can see, I've got a pretty fairly high life regen, which is pretty nice for staying alive against just being attacked by regular mobs. And then the Golem will take care of the rest. So let's back to the Growing Agony Duel. 2% increased damage with hits and poison for each poison on the enemy. So especially if you're attacking a boss, we are currently attacking with 4 attacks per second. If you keep doing that for 10 seconds, then now there's going to be 40 plus stacks of poison. So that's 80% increased damage. This is pretty nice since there's a very nice synergy there. Also, 10% chance per poison on the enemy to gain Unholy Might for 4 seconds, which, if I remember correctly, gives me 15% of my physical damage added as bonus chaos damage. So that's this lovely thing. Extra chaos damage based on your physical, and I believe the percentage was 15. So again, no more chaos damage means more damage that won't be reflected. But also it's a straight up bonus to the poison damage that we deal. So that's 15% more poison damage, which is pretty lovely. And the nice thing is, because most of your damage is over time, you are effectively immune to reflect, which just gives you yet another mod that you can run without too many issues. So on weapon switch, or no, not on weapon switch, but my secondary attack is Puncture with Melee Splash and Fortify and life gain on hit. And it is beautiful for staying alive. It's very potent. Especially with the two-handed weapon, you have a pretty large weapon reach. So there's going to be a lot of mobs that you will be hitting. And of course, every mob that you hit, you gain life for it. And it doesn't really matter. You can take a lot of punishment that way. So keep in mind here, I'm level 67 right now. As in the beta, currently we only have acts 5, 6 and 7 added. Act 8 is not there yet, Act 9 and 10 not either. So basically what I'm doing is, you can basically look at this, I have just reached maps. Currently running tier 2 maps. Works pretty well. So I think I missed a spot over there. Actually, I thought this would just be a small island thing, but look, that's okay. Do like how on the map how you can actually see where you have and haven't been, and especially with the water. So you will never ever miss packs that will spawn out of the water ever again. It's so good. But yeah, under-leveled map running is pretty cool. It's a nice challenge. You definitely have to focus much more on your defense, on your tank, and just staying alive. And just give you a new appreciation for how to make your build extra tanky, because monster damage is just going to be so out of proportions to your own. So now for this build I'm only running defensive auras. Well, yeah, temp change is defensive, Arctic Armour is defensive. I'm missing a yellow thing, there. And the flask are also defensive with the exception of sulfur, which also has a little bit of an offensive bonus due to the 40% increased damage, which of course, being increased damage across the board, also applies to your poison and your bleed damage, which is nice. Breaches are insanely dangerous. Because, as I said, level 67, most of my gear is a couple levels lower, so you could basically see it as I've got the gear you normally would have after you complete Cruel, and I'm now starting to run maps, so I'm under-geared. And breaches definitely, they're a little bit of a hit and miss. If this were hardcore, I would skip it. This being standard, we can give it a shot. It's a tall breach. I'm probably gonna be dead. If it's any other kind of breach, I have a better chance of surviving. But of course, it's a tall breach, so nope. The vortexes deal a lot of damage. They slow you down. That combination of taking damage, getting slowed down, so you can't keep gaining life from the life gain on hit on puncture. It's, as you see, it's basically suicide. But it is interesting to try, and if you don't get a tall breach, they're doable. Especially the physical breaches, they are great to run since my armor is pretty good. I mean, fully buffed up, I've got over 22,000 armor. At rest, it's 8,500. And as I said, that's bit gear. That's basically what you would normally have at the end of Cruel, not when you should start running maps. Well, actually, when you start running maps, most of the time you're doing that with gear you had on the Cruel anyway. I managed to increase my life a little bit. I think last video it was nearly around 2,500. So I slowly have been improving my gear, but yeah, it's far from great yet. Wow. Ah, yeah. Okay, there is a Path of Exile here, I think. Something was spinning to winning here. Yeah, Iron Graver. So as long as we just stand our ground, we fortify, we cause bleeding, and we just make them come to us, then if we stand, we have the full benefit of our Pantheon powers, which is something I haven't even gotten into. Because that's yet another aspect of builds that's gonna become relevant now. That wasn't there before. So on the Pantheon, we are currently using the Soul of Arakali. Reduce damage taken from damage over time. Increase recovery of life and energy shield if you've stopped taking damage over time recently. But no, with a very strong focus on life recovery. That is actually pretty nice if you get poisoned or bled or something. Well, as a Slayer, kind of bleeding immune, but now if you get poisoned or ignited, you fix it with your flask, then after that you've got 4 seconds of 25% increased life recovery. That's pretty stellar. And we got the Soul of Tukahama. As long as we're standing still, we get a 1% additional physical damage reduction, which builds up to a total of 8%. So, no, stand your ground. Let things come to you. You got a war cry. No, make them come to you. Works pretty darn well. Let's backtrack a little bit because, well, we did get quite far into the water here. I wonder if you get knocked back, if that counts as moving, or if that messes with the stationary bit. Okay. Range foes like this, yeah, you have to go to them. But then again, most of the time range foes, they're elemental based, so the physical damage reduction from the Soul of Tukahama doesn't really help you there. Okay, let's just ignore those for a little bit. Ooh, Jupiter's box. What's in the box? 8 additional items. And a magic. Oh, that's gonna hurt. That's gonna hurt. Lots of bears. It's quite a bunch of moving parts that you can add to this build, or that I actually have added to the build. And I don't want the bow. Let's just pick up the nice things. The Vaal Lightning Trap, something I finally decided, like, hey, wait, I'm missing something. Yes, something to do extra damage to bosses. It helps. And of course, increased damage taken probably also applies to the effectiveness of things like poison. So now the Golem just quietly applying the Decay buff. I really wonder just how high that damage is gonna scale up. Being pure chaos damage, you can scale Decay with things like Void Manipulation. But other new mods, they basically all mention things like poison or bleeding specifically, so it's a bit more difficult to scale it that way. It's not an ailment as far as I am aware, so that's also going to be interesting. Okay. And that guy is dead. Don't even need to attack him anymore because the poison will just take him out. And then we have a couple more regular mobs to take out. Yeah, it's I'm happy with how this build is turning out, and especially with how the new support gems are adding to the build. Because without the new support gems, it wasn't really all that viable to actually focus on dealing proper poison damage and things like that. Also, I think I just want to grab this Nightmare Bassinet. And with the new support gems, you have so many options. Depending on where you want to focus or what your build philosophy is, you can go in a number of ways. Focusing on initial dits, focusing on poison, focusing somewhere in between like I'm currently doing. And it's just nice, you just have so many options. Well, in this early, for the last bunch of levels, I've been playing on maps where I was massively out-leveled, so my entire focus and setup has been on just staying alive first, mostly, and dealing damage a second. And I think it's working pretty well, because now I can just stand in the middle of a pack of bears and then just hit all my flasks and things like that, and it's gonna be okay. Ooh, ghost possessed anger, and that's gonna be lovely. Okay, Warlord's Grip. This one is pretty tanky. Just make sure I keep my Fortify up. Okay, the added spiders here are pretty awesome because they just help me recharge my flasks. As you see, I can just switch targets and things like that, and the poison will just keep ticking. Of course, poison lasting that long, it's not gonna make sure that they take damage, so things like energy shield, if they even have it, doesn't reset and things like that. So got 1 damage taken. Let's just keep that one waiting for a little bit until we need it. And that is a fully cleared map. So look at the support gems. There's a couple more that are not related to poison and bleeding, which is why I haven't showed you. But we do have efficacy, which deals 10% more spell damage, 15% more damage over time, and 10% increased skill effect duration. It's blue, it has a slight spell bias, so if 1 out of the 3 modifiers doesn't work for a melee build like this, so this is the caster counterpart to something that would be a bit more specific to... Actually this is hits, not even melee hits, I just realized. If you do something like ethereal knives, physical, and then have some way of causing poison with that, then those hits also get scaled by the poison damage, for example. This is also just generic physical damage, so that would also work for an ethereal knives, or whatever you want to apply it with. Let's see, is there anything else that's... This is just ailments, so that is also caster compatible, so to say. Chance to bleed, this is physical damage with weapons, so this is melee specific, while this is caster specific. Maim, Morphis, attacks cause maiming, so this is also melee based, but it's red, so that makes sense. And lesser poison here is skills have a chance to poison, but it's not physical. So chance to bleed has a weapons bias. Poison, being green, is open to both melee and spells. So for ethereal knives, poison, this would be pretty cool actually. And given the fact that I did find a support gem for that, that could actually be an interesting build to try. Too bad it's a beta that gets a wipe in about a week. Ignite proliferation, that's even more specific, that's just only for ignites. That gets proliferated. It's a bit weird that it gets its own proliferate while we already have a generic proliferate, but it doesn't reduce damage like the other one does. We got immolate support. Support skills deal added fire damage against burning enemies. This doesn't say anything about spells or attacks or anything. It's just the enemy have to be burning. And mention the wording here, or note the wording here, it's burning, it's not ignite, it's burning. Ignite is a condition that applies burning. Righteous Fire directly applies burning. Searing Bonds directly applies burning. So if you have a Righteous Fire build, combining this with something that actually hits would be pretty nice. If you have a Searing Bond in a totem setup, maybe with something like a Flame Totem, this one, it gives you added fire damage against burning enemies. So there are some interesting combo potentials there. It is laid out based on the level at which you get them. The things like lesser support, they're all top row. They all unlock at level 8. Actually, just jump over back to town and just have a quick look at it. So just do the search for the support, then you see for the red gems we get Maim, we get Chance to Bleed, we get those at level 8. They come together with no life gain on hit, melee splash, knockback, stun, spell totems, and added fire. So this is the first wave of supports. Chance to Bleed and Maim are going to be there as a strength user. For poison, or for dex based, you get lesser poison at level 8 at the same level as things like added cold or LMP and also void manipulation. So poison with void manipulation, you already got the nice beginnings of a setup there for whatever you want to use it with. And for blue, we get Unbound Ailments at the beginning. So it just makes it last longer and be a bit more effective at the same time as things like added lightning and crits and stuff like that. Then the next tier is going to be level 18. You get Bloodlust, which is one of the old gems that interacted with bleeding. Note it has its second line restored. It was always there, it just got hidden. Bloodlust, you deal more melee physical damage against bleeding enemies, but you can't cause bleeding. So that was the original basis for my setup. Bloodlust on Viper Strike, and then have Puncture to apply the bleeding and Viper Strike to make use of it. In this case, yes, it's nice to have a lot more melee physical damage, but if you're focusing on your poison damage, then Bloodlust here is not actually all that useful, because there's better ways to scale the poison instead, or to scale both the hit and the poison. Let's see, that was that. So at level 18 you get the ailments, which is interesting because now you do more damage with your ailments and less damage with your hits. And as I mentioned, it's a bit of a weird trade-off. Your faster attacks, which of course you attack faster, you get more stacks of poison, so it is relevant for a poisoner build. For the casters, I don't think you get anything that has specifically interacts with ailments here. Nope, you just get your Control Destruction and Elemental Focus, which is the opposite of giving you ailments, because you can't inflict ailments. So then the next tier, level 31, there were a couple, but I don't think they were here. So you got your increased duration, you got your less duration, more damage multiplier at the expense of duration. You could potentially use this with things like poison. But yeah, you do give up quite a lot of duration, and the damage multiplier is not as effective as other things could be. Increased duration, if you're not using Viper Strike, then it's not going to help you, because then the poison is just going to be normal. But for Viper Strike, because the specific duration is based on how Viper Strike applies it, increased duration should increase it even further. But if it already lasts for 8 seconds, do you really need to make it last longer? And then that's it. Poison support, just a classic gem. Rapid Decay, also at level 31. So for the red and green gems, there's not really a lot. Efficacy on the blue side you get. So that's the more damage over time, or the more spell damage over time, and skill effect duration. And that's also kind of it. You have chance to ignite. That is one of the existing ones. And then all the way at level 38. So that's normally in the story after you have killed Calm and Doresso. Then you unlock Brutality, which arguably is one of the strongest melee more damage multipliers if you're using poison, and probably also if you're using bleeding, because it scales the same way, but bleeding doesn't stack, so that's only. And yeah, that's that. So on the green side we get Vile Toxins, which is also really awesome. So this is the setup that you want to grab when you get to it, but you can't level with it. And here you see how it starts at 6 stacks. Currently got it at 7. Hope to get it at 8 soon. And then over here, blue side got multiple gems. So you got Immolate, added damage against burning targets, Ignite Prolif. We got Decay, which it starts at 195 chaos damage for 10 seconds. At level 10 it's 625, and I'm assuming the scaling will just get better and better and better with time. And then here is the old school elemental prolif. Increase duration of your elemental ailments, so that's shock, freeze and ignite. Chance, shock, freeze and ignite. And ailments spread in a radius of 10. And ignite prolif is a radius of 16 but doesn't get any of the other benefits, so that's the difference. I seem to recall that elemental prolif also had a damage multiplier, less damage multiplier, but apparently that is no longer there. But with that said, I think I've talked about the new support gems and the interactions and things like that quite extensively now. So I'm gonna thank you very much for watching. If you got any questions, then leave a comment below. But other than that, I'm gonna see you again next time. Bye bye.